Welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone Global Games 2019, where we're done with the first game of the day. Unfortunately, Denmark were reverse swept, but now we're ready to jump into the second game of the day. We've got Greece, we've got Russia, and also we got the boys who are back in town for the first time. It's me and Gallen. It's our casting debut.
Out with the old, in with the new, Derek. This is my first time casting with you. I'm so excited. I love your memes. Maybe not your analyzing of the games, but memes fantastic.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
I think you do a very good job at analyzing Hearthstone. That was.
Thanks, buddy. Speaking of which, shall we analyze these shields and bans from both of you? They have gone for Greece going with a pretty standard strategy, I think it's fair to say, of bringing 4 good decks and shielding the Shaman. Silvername and Russia going with something a little bit different, though.
I'm not going to lie, Derek. I believe that there is a second audio feed right now because I can hear myself and hear you twice. So I will have to figure out some way to fix that. Let's see.
Is that so?
Yes. Okay, I fixed it. We're good. Okay. I had a second feed up. So we have a Priest versus Rogue. And this matchup I really like from the Rogue side. I think that Rogue kind of preys on both N'Zoth Priest and Combo Priest. It's very interesting that never mind, sorry. I'm a little bit haywire right now. It seems like I've had something pulled up from the yeah.
Well, I would agree with you there in your initial ramblings that Rogue does feel pretty good against both kinds of priests. Most of the times that I've seen it against Combo Priest, against the Resurrection Priest, I feel like it's able to just perfectly thread the needle of getting that spot where you don't rely on having a wide board in the way that Token Shaman does, which obviously the Priest can clear off fairly well. But you also don't necessarily need to stick anything on board at all. You can get a little bit of board early on, stick a little bit of pressure, and then quite easily finish the game off with the damage that comes from Waggle Picks and Leroy's. And while this deck is pretty good at putting taunts in the way, with obviously the Kartut Defenders, the Convincing Infiltrators, it doesn't actually have that much healing for a Priest deck.
And this is, okay, so this is something that I want to actually point out. And sorry about the initial flustering here. I was looking at the wrong matchup, so I was wondering why there was like a double Shadow or Death in a combo list, but I'm just entirely wrong. One of the tools that Rogue has in this matchup specifically that is so powerful is Sap. A lot of times as a N'Zoth Priest or a Xerix Cloning Gallery Priest, you have to commit like 6 mana or 5 mana to a taunt to stay alive. And when you get to sap that as a Rogue, suddenly you are going to be so far ahead in tempo that it's really hard for the Priest to come back. We actually see Fino pick up a sap pretty early on. I think that's going to be pretty crucial for his game plan of just, like you said, damage face with Waggle Picks and early minion pressure.
I agree. In general, I feel like this matchup does play out the way you say. You know, you push damage early on, sap away their minions. Rogue often breaks the rules that it sets itself, though. For example, have you ever heard of something as ridiculous as Spirit of the Shark into Psycho?
It summons 2 3/3s with Reborn? That does sound pretty good. But he found something boring with just the evil miscreant with the Spirit of the Shark. I wonder if Fino actually just doesn't even play the Spirit of the Shark here. He goes for a Psycho Pump. It's like pretty powerful tempo play.
That's a good point, actually, yeah. Goes into turn 5, which is obviously the Mass Hysteria turn, but it's not that bad against Mass Hysteria because you obviously have a Reborn. Does mean the Edwin will likely die, though.
He could play the Spirit of the Shark as well, but it's pretty likely that dies if there's a Mass Hysteria from Silvername's side. There is a world where it stays alive, where the Spirit of the Shark would attack the 1/1 first, and then the 4/4 attacks the 1/1, but besides that, there's no way for it to...
I was trying to remember if 0 attack minions do attack, and they do, right, in Mass Hysteria.
There is also a world where the 1/1 could attack the Spirit first, and the Spirit attacks the 1/1, the 4/4 attacks them. Anyways, it's pretty confusing. Most of the time, Spirit of the Shark dies.
Yeah.
So I like Fino's play here.
Yeah.
He's got a sap. If this Convincing Infiltrator comes down, you're looking at an extra huge amount of damage that Fino can push. Even if Silvername goes for Ziliax instead to try to play around sap, Fino can just load up again. He's got Power Word Replicate. I believe that's what it's called. He gets a 5/5 with Reborn, and he gets to just backstab the Zilliax.
Nutty.
I mean, that's pretty good. If you look at what the Priest tries to do to contest or, like, wide boards like this, they have Light Bomb. The double Reborn is going to just push an extra 6 damage. He gets to have 2/3/1 Blink Boxes afterwards.
That's right. And that's even assuming that he did have that, which I think Fino absolutely has the luxury to play around. You know, given how good of a situation he's in, how much damage he can push, he'll just be thinking, I think already at this point, how do I lose? Is it board clears? Is it resurrection effects that he can go for? And with the pretty high amount of damage he can actually start to rack together with the Life Drinker, Spirit of the Shark, and Shadow Step, I think he just needs to be focusing on pushing as much damage as possible now.
Yeah, his hand is pretty much perfect for what you want to be doing. You want early game chip, like you said. He's got the Blink Box, the Edwin. He's been doing that. And he has, like, he still has mid game pressure with the Power Word Replicate. And then even with that, he has the end game finisher of, like, Spirit of the Shark, Life Drinker, Shadow Step. Pretty much has, like, the early game tools, the mid game tools, and the late game tools, all of which are fantastic.
Spirit of the Shark is interesting. I think I like deviating away from Power Word Replicate because it's so weak to Light Bomb in particular, which is obviously what you're expecting on turn 6. But I was wondering if it should be Miscreant instead, because you can play some lackeys along with it. But I guess this does set up pretty beautifully for a Life Drinker on the following turn.
A lot of plays open for Fino. I imagine he would like to start with a Sap on this 2/6 and just push an extra 8 damage this turn.
I guess in that case, if you're going for the Sap, if you're expecting it to be played again next turn, as is likely their best play on turn 7, maybe you don't develop the Life Drink and you instead go for the Miscreant on this turn?
Yep. Evil Miscreant makes a lot of sense. You just get to push extra damage a lot of the time.
Like
and there's also the world where if you really want to protect your shark, you could just Shadow Step it if you'd like to. I don't think you should do that. It's pretty safe from pretty much everything.
Agreed.
Oh, those are not good lackeys.
Those are not good lackeys.
Well, they're okay lackeys. You can Titanic lackey your Edwin and just protect us from the light. Like, Fino's still winning this game pretty easy.
He is definitely still winning this.
Yeah.
Well played.
Oh, Fino throwing out the well played. He can be all in on Battlegrounds for the last couple of weeks, have a pretty horrible season in GM, and he's still just the BMing son of a gun you've always known.
What I like about this is that a Forbidden Words can just kill a Spirit of the Shark for 0 mana.
That's true.
Scabby. That's just the tech, man.
I mean, it's less tech, I think, and more just a very strong card in this deck. But I see your point.
One of the things about Forbidden Words that is always funny to me is that when Purple was playing in Grandmasters last season, as combo priest, he would always have a copy of Forbidden Words in there, and no one else would be doing this, but he'd just have it for like weeks on end. It's actually pretty good, but it's just funny how that card has like managed to find its way, like sneak its way into deck lists here and there. Like from a top-down perspective, it's like not as good as a Shadow Word Pain for its mana cost or as a Shadow Word Death, but it does have that versatility, and that's often what priest needs.
Fino just needs the Blink Box here to survive, and he has Lethal, with obviously Shadow Stepping the Life Drinker, and that does mean we're jumping up to a very nice, quick 1-0 lead for Fino here. I think, you know, it's one of those things that just annoys me about Fino as a player is he's been in one of his lulls in terms of practicing Hearthstone, obviously, like a lot of players, playing a lot of Battlegrounds. Just doesn't matter. Inside and out, he can just play it perfectly whenever he needs to.
Yeah, I think that if there was a deck or a class that I want Fino on, like if I was doing a fantasy draft, it would always be Rogue. You know, last year, specifically in 2018, he was pretty much the best Quest Rogue player in the world. You know, you'd come up to him after a tournament and he just says, "Oh, I can't lose with that deck." And this year as well, you know, like in Grandmaster Season 1, he actually like qualified with some really impressive Shark Rogue play. So seeing him pilot that deck is always a treat.
I would agree with you there. And now, moving on to the Druid as well. One of the other classes that I think Fino, and I guess most of his practice group as well, I definitely associate with Druid quite strongly. I guess more like Orange and Hunter Ace. Fino is definitely, like you said, the rogue guy. But I think he's still going to be able to pilot this deck very, very well up against the Token Shaman from Silvername.
I mean, well, we see Silvername actually having like double Doomhammer Shaman, which is very weird, I would say. It looks like he has double Rockbiter weapon as well, double Lava
Oh yeah,
Burst.
right.
So
You are. Aggro Shaman.
while he is that kind of Shaman, he does not have. It's just a lot different from the normal type that we see. There's no Sea Giants. There's no Soul of the Murlocs. It's just a lot more about pushing face damage, which I think Druid is actually really equipped to deal with. Something like Hidden Oasis
Agreed.
in your opening hand. Like, that card alone just stops so much damage. It wouldn't have actually surprised me to see Fino keep that card in his opener.
Yeah, I think the Druid is going to be slightly better against this deck than against the regular token Shaman, but honestly I don't think it's going to be that different. A lot of the same key cards are still there. Obviously, Desert Hare plus Evolve, as well as the Mogu, which is really, really good to get down in the early game.
Yes and no, right? Because a lot of what Druid struggles with is like large boards once they have to use one of their AoEs, Soul of the Murloc, for example. If I had to choose between the two decks that I could play versus Druid specifically, I definitely want the Bloodlust Sea Giant Shaman rather than the Doomhammer Shaman.
I agree. But it's definitely still possible to get that kind of overwhelming board.
Fino's going to deviate away from his quest to just develop this Crystal Merchant. I think that makes a lot of sense. Just stave off the damage. Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing Coin Crystal Merchant more and more, I feel like, as the meta develops, just as a perfectly fine play, because, you know, a lot of players are realizing if you don't actually have Oasis Surger or Starfall in your hand, a lot of the time turn 6 is the best turn, or a good enough turn to complete your quest anyway.
Yeah, I mean, from Fino's perspective as well, if he did not coin out this Crystal Merchant, what was his game plan going to be? He can go quest coin on turn 1, turn 2 he passes, and his opponent gets to develop a free lackey, and then it's suddenly turn 3, he's taking extra 4 damage from the Sludge Slurper.
It's just too much. It's a nice pickup as well in the Hidden Oasis. Like you said, that's really the game plan here for Fino, is there are still states where you can just automatically lose if they hit the huge Moju hair turn, but that's less likely to happen with this deck, and therefore getting that healing is pretty much the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, and the threat of wide boards is not as apparent, I would say.
Agreed. Yeah, I remember playing a kind of build of this deck before the rotation of the old wild cards came back into standard, so it was before Hair and Evolve was a thing. It was kind of an initial iteration of Jambre Shaman. I think it might have even before Mogu's came in, that just abused the power of Thunderhead and Spirit of the Frog. And it was relatively powerful, but back then it was really just used to prey on the combo priests, which are so prevalent in the meta because you had so much strong early game control. Whereas now, when it's more druids, more token shamans knocking around, I definitely prefer the token-based build, as you were talking about with the Bloodlusts and the Soul of the Murloc.
That's a huge pickup from Silvername's perspective. Electro Lava Burst next turn could just kill Fino.
So does he therefore not overload with the Doomhammer on this turn?
Well, it's really interesting because Fino picked up an Innervate, so if he'd like to, he could do something like coin Hidden Oasis. Now, it's going to be like this really weird dichotomy, right? Because if Silvername just uses the Rockbiter weapon this turn, pushes 5 damage face to Fino, okay? Fino's game plan could either be coin Nourish plus 2 Anubisat Defenders or coin Hidden Oasis plus 2 Anubisat Defenders. He might think with coin Nourish that that's going to advance his game plan a bit more. He's still protected from a lot of face damage because Anubisat Defenders are in play, but it doesn't actually play around. Oh, wow. So he's just going to...
This is a little surprising.
Yeah, this is a little bit interesting to me as well.
Because like you said, the only ways that Fino can prevent against this are Innovate Health on the Hidden Oasis or Ferocious Hell, right?
Well, suddenly it looks like Fino can just go for a coin Nourish Anubisat here, and I think he's protected versus everything. Silvername gets the opportunity to go Rockbiter weapon instead this turn, and he gets an extra activation from it because of the Wind Fury on the Doomhammer. But the taunts are actually going to protect against that. It was
so
a
then
tough
what's the
call,
plan for Fino? What's the curve? If he goes Nourish here, he obviously goes up to 8 mana next turn, so then just Hidden Oasis plus Zephyrus. I guess that's probably just game winning on its own.
Yeah, you get an extra taunt in play.
Yeah.
I think the game plan for Fino after that Doomhammer came down was pretty spelled out.
Agreed.
You know, the unspent mana from that Nourish makes his quest active. He gets another Hidden Oasis.
Obviously, things couldn't have gone much worse for Silvername than this, obviously with Rock Biter Weapon being double blocked by the 2/3/5s. But it does beg the question, like you said, of was it just better to go for the setup for Lava Burst? I guess it's just really picking your poison for Silvermane, because if he goes for this line of play and he's met with Nourish with Anubis defenders, then he's obviously very weak to that. But if he went with the other line and was met with a Ferocious Howl, then he'd be a lot weaker if he was met by that.
It definitely was a bit weak to Ferocious Howl, but I think I don't know. It's hard to say. What I can say is that Fino's Hidden Oasis here is just absolutely fantastic. Gain 12, summon a 6/6 with taunt.
It's
really
good.
Can't beat
He's
that.
definitely yeah, he's pulling miles and miles into the lead now. Silvername with the Thunderhead is able to at least stabilize the board somewhat. Sorry, he could completely clear his opponent's board on this turn.
I might have not done enough careful math on that, but I think even against a Ferocious Howl, he was really close or either had lethal. He would have a 2/3 in play, and he would still have a Lickum that dealt 3 damage the following turn. I could be wrong.
No, he wouldn't have. Oh wait, are you saying he wouldn't swing with the Lickum? Okay, sorry.
Well,
Yes,
he could
you're
have
correct.
re-equipped. He could have re-equipped the Lickum that turn, and then
Oh,
the next
okay,
turn
okay.
he would have dealt an
Yeah,
extra
yeah.
3 damage.
Yes, you're
Sorry
correct.
about that. The second Hidden Oasis is really going to be lights out, I would say. And this is where a Token Shaman would have been a lot better, I would say, is, again, specifically something like double Hidden Oasis, because when you have a Sea Giant in play instead of a Lava Burst, and, you know, that Hidden Oasis gets a lot less scary.
I mean, I think it's a very difficult conclusion to draw, because the problem is that the Druid would be much less likely to have to go innovate into Nourish versus a Token Charm, because they're going to be less aggressive and they usually kill you with one big swing. But I see your point. I definitely see your point. Right. I think we're looking at one play and one play only here.
Desert Hare, Hero Power Evolve.
Could have gone Lickum as well to take less damage on the Loti killing it off, but I think the extra is probably more worth it.
Okay, I mean, he does have the chance at getting a Lackey here. Lackey could give him a spell, an Ethereal Lackey, and from there, you know, anything's possible.
Yeah.
You even got Electric Storm Surge in hand.
Sure. Okay. Maybe. What are we looking at? Like, if you can get Discover a Battle Cry into Shutterwalk, I don't even think that does anything.
It summons some Desert Hares, adds a couple Lackeys to your hand. That could be more Ethereal Lackeys, and that could give you another Shutterwalk. There, we found it, Darok.
That's the line.
Fantastic.
Right.
Absolutely.
So a 100% path to victory here for Silvername if he's able to find it.
Pretty much.
I mean, I think what's honestly more likely is that if Fino doesn't hit any card draw for the rest of the game and just draws the low value cards from his deck, maybe we're looking at the possibility for Silvername to outvalue if he gets very, very lucky in the next couple of cards.
I mean, I genuinely believe that the game plan starts with an Ethereal.
Yes.
That is a way for Silver. Oh, well, there we go.
All right. He has to not die first of all, so we're probably looking at Earthquake here. Actually, as the best card.
Earthquake would be pretty significant, I would say. At the same time, though, I think that might not be enough.
Sure.
Is there an elemental in play?
No. No, I don't think so. I mean, Electra is an elemental, so he could go Electra,
Yeah.
Earth and Might to get 2 elementals.
The Vernal Ancient that gets summoned off of Hidden Oasis is not an elemental.
Mm-hmm. It's a tree. Okay.
That's not it.
That's not it. I mean, he's not
My-
dead. He's alive now, as it currently stands. Well, I guess he was alive anyway. He can now get a 5-drop off his thing.
Wow. Actually, I guess you could get the Vilebreath Skitter. Is that what it's called?
Yes. Yeah. Good point.
Yes, that is still available.
But now with the Couldn't Have Forgotten King easily surviving, it does look like finally Silver Name is just straight up out of gas. I don't think there's any content in this deck that can save him.
Evolve for a miracle.
The most infamous card in the game at the moment. Evolve. I'm not.
Well, you could
seeing
get a Hecklebot. Okay, Hecklebot plus another big thing.
Those are
No.
pretty good. Hecklebot told me was where we were at, but doesn't come together. Fino, 2 games up, along with Hawkeye as well. And haven't really even mentioned him so far, but Hawkeye, the other Greek player, a player who I feel like is definitely more known for his play towards the start of Hearthstone's competitive life cycle, has maybe disappeared a little bit from the scene recently. But as we can see here, along with Fino, he's able to play some pretty good Hearthstone, I'd say.
Yeah, so far the games from Fino I think have been pretty well played. I think that every decision that he's made has been the optimal one in terms of like what I'd like to see from him. I think that maybe Silvername could have put him under a little bit more pressure in that last game. You know, he could have given him a little bit harder choices, especially that Nourish turn. But it's always hard to say that. Like you were saying, it is definitely more likely for something like a Ferocious Howl to come down. I didn't really do the math on specifically if Fino had or if Silvername had lethal for the Ferocious Howl, but it was very close. And, you know, maybe there's a world where he could have put the pressure on Fino to make a little bit harder choice. But yeah, I do agree with you that Fino and Hawkeye have both been playing excellently so far.
Again, I would definitely agree. And it does now mean that we're in this already almost a meme of a situation for 29 global games with Shaman, the best deck in the game.
It seems like we lost you, Derek. Well, yeah, so I think what his thing was going to be was that Shaman is the best deck in the game, but we've seen it lose game after game right now. To be fair, though, it is a bit of a different Shaman. We're seeing, you know, Doomhammer, Bloodlust, Doomhammer instead of Bloodlust, and Lava Burst instead of Sea Giant. But we will be seeing that deck again at some point, hopefully. We have to go to a quick break before Game 3, but don't go anywhere. We have some more exciting Hearthstone coming up.
Welcome back. It's Hearthstone Global Games 2019, and we are halfway through this series, approaching the end, actually, you could say, for Greece versus Russia. 2-0 up for Greece with Fino and Hawkeye, and still yet to get a win on the table are the Russian Federation with Silvername and Levick. But I think we can both agree, even though Shaman feels like the best deck at the moment, Russia may have got themselves a good matchup now, finally.
Yes, they are going to have a Control Warrior versus this Evolved Shaman from Greece's side. And there's interesting things about this Control Warrior. Number one, they're not playing N'Zoth, which is something that we don't see that much anymore. They're playing Armageddillo, which is, again, kind of old school in terms of what Control Warrior has. And they also have a Hecklebot and a Youthful Brewmaster. So it's like they didn't even see the new cards that were released. They're sticking to their guns. They're sticking to the old list. Although they do have an Emperor Thaurissan, so they saw at least part of it.
And so why do you think they're going for this? Because I think it would one would be forgiven for thinking that the N'Zoth version of Warrior is basically just a like an upgrade of the old Taunt Warrior, considering how many people are shifting over it. So do you see any benefit of going for this more old school Warrior list?
Well, the things that stick out to me specifically are the Youthful Brewmaster and the Hecklebot. I imagine that they're trying to queue into a Warrior Mirror with those two cards specifically. Hecklebot is really good because if you pull in N'Zoth or if you pull their Elysiana, suddenly you just like win the game. And then Youthful Brewmaster on your own Archivist Elysiana, after being reduced in cost by the Emperor Thaurissan, can give you an extra 10 cards in Fatigue. So in specific matchups, I imagine that this list is quite better, specifically the Mirror.
So we all know the power of Mogu Flesh Shaper in Shaman, as well as Sea Giant, I suppose, as well, obviously getting cheaper for every minion on the board. Does that ever mean that Levick does not play the Youthful Brewmaster here?
I imagine that from his side, just drawing through his deck as quickly as possible is of paramount importance, especially already with the 2 rush minions in hand. He really wants to find that Zilliax before he draws it, so it does not surprise me at all to see him play Youthful Brewmaster here.
Yeah, I mean, at first glance, I didn't even really see the bounce the Town Crier line. I was just thinking, you know, trade it in, get a 3-2 on the board.
Okay.
Which isn't even, like, necessarily worse. It obviously allows you to contest a little bit early on. But I think for the most part, a 3-2 probably doesn't contest that well, because they're likely just going to be playing, like, a Spirit of the Frog on turn 3, or a Thunderhead as the next couple of minions, against which a 3-2 doesn't make too much difference.
A couple things about Levick. For those that don't know, he had a very good performance at Masters Tour Bucharest. He finished 6-3, which, while not giving him a top 8 spot, is one of the highest performing finishes of the people at the tournament. 6-3 was quite a good result. I'm not sure if that qualifies him for Masters Tour Arlington. I believe that 6-3 may have given them 1 qualification spot, so he may be going to Arlington as well.
That'd be cool. You don't really need to know how the qualification process works anymore, do you now, Gallon? Up in your ivory tower.
Thankfully, yeah. But it is cool to see the people that show up like through the Open Cup system again and again, the people that qualify, even if they don't get a great result at a Masters Tour, the fact that they're qualifying each and every single one, it speaks for itself, I would say.
Very much so. It's not an easy task to do in its own right. Winning or even just getting top 2 in one of these Open Cups is it's harder than it looks, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. You can also qualify for a Masters Tour by getting top 16 in your region. If you get top 16 in North America or top 16 in Europe, depending on which month you're finishing, you can get a qualification through there as well. Something to keep in mind.
Hawkeye taking it lovely and slow here. I think it makes a good amount of sense. Nothing at the moment is really popping out to me from his hand. He can't even get like a Witchilaki on the Mogu quite yet. And even then, you generally want to bide your time against Warrior and try and go for one kind of omega powerful turn and just hope that that gets there. Usually setting up a Soul of the Murloc for Bloodlust or getting down a very, very powerful board all in one go. It usually doesn't work, but I think it's the best shot you have against Warrior.
Yeah, I was talking about this with Lorinda earlier today, which is that when you're playing against Warrior compared to like a normal Hearthstone deck, when you're playing against Quest Druid or Rogue or Priest, for example, if you give them a turn, they will take that and you will lose the game. Against Warrior, however, they often have like pretty awkward proactive plays that they can make. You know, they really aren't the best deck at playing proactively. So if you are taking off turns, it's really not the end of the world against Warrior.
I wonder.
Do you think that changes when you're playing against this kind of Taunt Warrior as opposed to N'Zoth Warrior, though? Because a Kartuk Defender is very, very low statted for a 6-drop, whereas our Megadillo and Tomb Warden are pretty well statted, honestly.
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if you start getting to turn 6, turn 7, turn 8, that's when Warrior will start picking up instead of like N'Zoth Warrior turn 9, turn 10. But against both of these builds, you know, the early turns are still pretty fine to like take off. So turn 4 is not really a turn that you need to like be worried about taking off against Warrior. Oh, but that is something that you have to worry about. That is not a good 8-drop.
Yeah, there's not many terrible 8-drops. You're really looking at like the Bartender, High Reek, and this one, in some matchups to a lesser extent, like some of the time, this is good enough to get the job done. Up against Warrior, where they have Restless Mummy and Ziliax that you know 100% they have in hand, this does not get the job done.
It's quite abysmal. What's really funny is that if you're running a Quest Shaman and you get Hyreek the Bat and you have like a Bog Slasher, you can bounce the Hyreek back to your hand, and suddenly when you play Shudderwalk, it just summons 6 Shudderwalks.
It's a great anecdote. It doesn't help.
It does not help Hawkeye at all in this game, no.
Yeah.
Hawkeye is worried about a Restless Mummy. He's seen the Town Crier played again.
I wonder.
He knows that it could very likely be in the Warrior's hand. I believe that it's not guaranteed. I could be wrong, and there's also a chance.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's not guaranteed
Because
just due to the fact that it's drawn 2, and from Hawkeye's perspective, that could mean he drew his Ziliax instead of Restless Mummy. The Restless Mummy isn't naturally drawn. However, it is. It's in his hand. This Thunderhead is dying.
So I guess good play there from Levick to play the Restless Mummy off the Town Crier instead of the natural one, because it leaves Hawkeye with a little bit less information.
Yep. Just some solid Hearthstone fundamentals. Play the cards that your opponent knows about rather than the ones your opponent doesn't know about.
Yep. So Hawkeye here has, the way I see it, 2 real lines of play. We could look at starting to go all in very quickly with, you know, probably not the right play, but just double Desert Hare or Desert Hare plus Soul of the Murloc, something like that. Or we could start to see more delay tactics, kind of reminiscent of what we saw from Alan 870806 in Bucharest, as well as many other players, but that was the real standout for me, of just hero powering, delaying, and waiting for the good cards to come through.
So I remember I was actually I was watching that game live as it happened in Romania, and one of the big things about Alan Numbers' list, I'm just gonna say Alan Numbers because that's a lot of numbers at the end of his name, compared to like a normal Evolved Shaman list, was that he actually had some very weird engines in the deck. For example, he was running stuff like Cult Master, which says whenever a minion you control dies, draw a card. And watching that game, yes, he could play a very weird strategy, but his deck, I think, also allowed him to do that, where normal Token Shaman decks don't. So, like, I've seen a lot of people say, hey, you should just play it slower, because I saw this one game in Bucharest where it worked out really well. And I feel like yes and no. If your deck is designed to do that, I think you can. But again, it's a very specific list that can actually take advantage of these slow matchups versus Warrior. I think you should still be playing for tempo as a normal Evolved Shaman, even if that is pretty unfortunate, because, you know, Warpath or even a Brawl just clear your board instantly.
And I think specifically in this matchup, Hawkeye does definitely, have to get a little bit of a move on, bit of pep in his step, or he will just undeniably start losing to the tempo that Levick can throw onto the board.
Yeah, and I mean, we were just talking about this, where, you know, turn 6, turn 7, turn 8, that's really where this Warrior deck starts fighting for tempo instead of turn 9, turn 10 with the N'Zoth Warrior. And we actually see that in action. An Armadillo down this turn that Hawkeye has to answer. If he doesn't, then this Tomb Warden and the Ziliax are both going to get massively buffed. It's looking really good for Russia right now. Lots of options. None of them are good.
Yeah, so what has a chance of winning? Like, if we were to see Sea Giant plus Soul of the Murloc is the play that's standing out to be the most for, like, mana utilization and getting a sticky board. In the absolute dream scenario that there's no removal, you're winning the game. And honestly, I feel like that might be the best chance that you have of winning this game, is to just pray for the absolute dream scenario. And so I think this is probably the best line that Hawkeye have, even though it's incredibly optimistic.
I agree with that. Sad news is that a single Warpath can deal with all but one Murloc at the end of this. He can Warpath twice, trade in his Armadillo into the Sea Giant, then Warpath again 2 more times, clear off the Murloc that summons from the Spell Power Totem, and clear the 8/8.
I think I actually prefer leaving the Sea Giant alive and getting another tick off the Armadillo. Probably.
It seems a bit greedy to me. I don't think you need I don't think you need like a 7/10 Tomb Warden, if that makes sense. I think 5/8 and 7/10s both do the same thing.
Sure, but like, I don't know. I just don't know what an 8/8 does. Like, so what if you play 2
It
Warpaths
hits
there
you in
and
the
I don't know,
face
just
for
hero
8
powers?
damage, Derek.
If
That's
they
what
can
it
clear
does.
your Armadillo, if they can clear your
Which
Armadillo, which they have
can.
no guarantee to be able to do.
Why'd you ever risk it? Okay, to be fair, we're arguing a point that probably doesn't matter. The Warrior's so far ahead that no
It
matter really
probably
what
does.
what they do, they're gonna win. But I'm gonna this is my hill to die on, Derek. I think you're wrong. Killing the 8/8 makes a lot of sense. Give yourself as many ways to not lose the game as possible. Kill the 8, attack mini.
I think they are both 100% lines, and above that point, it doesn't really make any difference. Like, the stats that you can put on the board with Tomb Warden just do not lose the game at that point. And especially, like, even if they
5/8, not 6/10. Wow, this game is just over. The Shaman wins.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying your line was perfectly good. It wins the game 100% of the time.
Thank you. It was Levik's line.
Same line.
Levik's line was
Did that.
perfect.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Either way, like you said, it is going to be a very, very miserable situation for Hawkeye. Thankfully, he's able to clear off these 5/8s that he may have had more difficulty with. Were they 7/10s?
Yeah. You know, Hawkeye does actually have, like, if there was no board clear in Levik's hand, he would have, like, a 1%. It's pretty high.
That's better than you usually got against Warrior at this point.
Absolutely.
It's not actually the case. Fantasy land. Something.
Imagine he's interested in saving this ball for this Desert Hare. There's no reason to do it now. But that pick was huge. And a Ziliax as well, to just gain back all your health.
That's right.
Unity, precision,
I can't think of the 4 drops you'd get off this Desert Hare that would contest this board.
Yeah, I mean, post-expansion, when we have the new, what is it, Nazari? That's a 4-mana 8/8. That'll be pretty juicy. That'll give Shaman a chance, except Evolve will rotate out when the new expansion hits. But, you know, in Wild, oh, boy, are you going to be seeing some mana 8/8s hit the board.
Yeah. Arcane Keithsmith is not the 4 drop.
Yep. Alright, we can see a concede now anytime from Hawkeye. That is going to be game 3 going in the Russians' favour.
you win.
And that does mean that we are going to be heading on to, again, the Shaman deck. And Russia, I believe, now remaining with their Priest, which is a reasonable matchup in my experience. Not quite so good as the Warrior and the Mirror, close to the Mirror, with their aggro Shaman versus the token Shaman.
I mean, and once again, we see the Shaman lose. Maybe Evolve Shaman is just not the best deck. Maybe it's overhyped. Due to this 4-game sample size that we have here.
Yeah, I got High Legend with it last time, which means it literally by definition has to be broken because Yeah, I'm not very good at Hearthstone, but I was able to get a very good rank with it last season. Yeah, it's my
I've seen
obligatory rank.
I've seen many Hecklebots and Tyrions score against me so far. So I will be hesitant to agree with you and say that Shaman is still good, even though the small game sample size does not reflect it as such.
Right, heading in, skipped a little bit ahead here, didn't get to see the mulligans, unfortunately, but it looks to me like a really blooming good hand here for Russia. They've got the Frog, the absolute dream. They've got a very good chance of being able to find the Evolve as well. Taking a look at their list, it might actually be 100%. Not quite. They're running the... oh no, they're running 2 Lightning Bolts, so they're less likely to find it than the normal Evolve Shaman would be. But they still got a good shot of finding the Evolve.
To be honest, I think this is a strong hand from both players. There's a really weird thing from Hawkeye's perspective where you could elect to not play the Spirit of the Frog this turn. But it's probably not worth it. You should probably just go for it this turn. There's a weird dynamic in the Shaman matchup where you kind of want to be the person that does the thing second. If you can make your opponent do something with Spirit of the Frog, and then you get to do something with Spirit of the Frog, often if you're going second, you get way more leeway in what you have in terms of what you need to do. And generally, like, Shaman is a deck that's built around capitalizing on what your opponent does. You know, Mogu Flesh Shaper, Lightning Storm, Zap, Voltaic Burst, all this stuff, it gets way better when you go second.
I agree completely. I still wonder if you're maybe just supposed to go with the Spirit of the Frog on this turn. It's really, really close.
I mean, they're debating it. I wouldn't be surprised for them, to just hero power here. I kind of like it. In fact, I like it.
What do you think their plan is at the moment?
Wait for their opponent to load up with Spirit of the Frog, and then, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If you follow up with your own Spirit of the Frog, suddenly you're just at a big advantage, I would say.
Right, I like it. I like it. Cool, now with the mutate as well, I think that Levick is like getting very, very close to certain that he'll be able to go for Hair plus Evolve. Or I guess not certain, there's 6 1-cost spells in the deck, so we'll draw half of them. It would be a little unfortunate if he wasn't able to find at least 1 Evolve there. But the good thing is for Hawkeye, he has, he can prepare for that eventuality with this Thunderstorm, Lightning Storm, sorry, in his hand. Because of his choice to hold back on the Frog, like you said, he can react and be in the lead as the game progresses.
Shaman is kind of the deck that encapsulates what a swing turn is in Hearthstone. You often hear this being talked about among great players, a swing turn, which, like, the level 1 of Hearthstone is tempo equals good. You play your stuff, and you try to play as much stuff as possible. You want to spend your mana, play your cards, right? So then the level 2 is like, okay, how do I beat that? I want things that get better when my opponent plays stuff. And we've seen this throughout Hearthstone's history. For example, one of the most complained about cards and one of the strongest cards that was like a swing turn kind of card was Spreading Plague. Your opponent would play a lot of minions, you'd play Spreading Plague, and it would get more and more powerful depending on how much your opponent's loaded onto the board. Shaman is kind of like a Spreading Plague, where the more stuff your opponent has, stuff like your Mogu Flesh Shaper, your Sea Giant get cheaper, your Lightning Storms get better, and again, it's really good at that level 1 kind of Hearthstone of just playing for tempo.
I think that's something I didn't actually explore when I was playing the Shaman Mirrors enough, was delaying the Spirit of the Frogs. Because it can just be very, very powerful. I think I was too aggressive playing it early. Because, like, it's even when you play it early, it's still very, very strong.
That's one of the things, is the deck's power level is very high, but there's always, like, ways you can eke out, 1 or 2 extra percent in each matchup.
Yeah.
So, like, holding back on the Spirit of the Frog, I think if you play the Spirit of the Frog there, it still was a fine Hearthstone play. You still accomplished a lot of your game plan, if that makes sense. But, holding it back just gives you that little extra edge in these kinds of really tense matchups. We're going to see Levick here load up onto the board, probably playing Desert Hare Evolve, and Hawkeye gets to respond with, I would say, even more powerful turn.
Yeah, I really like Levick's play here of overloading as much as he possibly can on this turn, because the next turn's looking pretty lackluster anyway. You can't play the Vicina, so you may as well just get all the overload out of the way in one turn. Wow.
Oh, Desert Obelisk. Not the one
That is not a good selection of minions. That is garbage.
No, it is not.
Look at this. This could be Mogu Sea Giant Lightning Storm. You could even zap first to try and find a I suppose you'd
And
want a
this is what I
Voltaic
mean.
burst.
Like, this perfectly encapsulates what I'm talking about. You go second with
Yeah.
the Spirit of the Frog. Your opponents use pretty much all of their gas, and you get to respond with something equally, if not more powerful.
Yeah.
Hawkeye is probably interested in zapping something that will not die, so that way he can go Mogu Flesh Shaper, get an Evolve down, and play the Sea Giant.
For sure.
Doesn't find it.
Okay, I guess this works out pretty well either way. You either get a huge board of your own, or you get to clear much more stuff on your opponent's side of the board.
I really like how Greece approached this game. I think they had one really tense decision to make, and they nailed it.
If they can get all these attacks here, that is. No.
Nice. They could have put one extra damage on the Desert Obelisk. I don't think that matters.
Agreed.
They got the important stuff in. And this is all but locked up, I would say. Levitt can decide to kill the Mogu Flesh Shaper and the Spirit of the Frog, but he's still in a huge amount of trouble. There's an 8/8 and a Thunderhead facing him down.
And you know what? This was an impressive display because if you were to look at these two players' starting hands, as I was thinking at the start, Russia just looked miles in the lead. They had Frog, they had Hair, they had the Coin, they had a few zero-cost spells. Everything was going right. Like, do you think they did anything wrong along the way, or was it just a case of a really nice play from Greece?
I think it's one of those things where, from Greece, I think they did a next level play, and Russia may have not expected it. Maybe it could have turned into one of those weird things where, because they didn't play the Spirit of the Frog, you're not supposed to play the Spirit of the Frog as Russia. But I don't really blame them for just playing for tempo. Again, that's like generally a pretty solid Hearthstone play. It's just play your stuff, right? So
yeah,
it could just be that, Greece figured that out, got that next level play.
I mean, I remember very specifically a game against, I think it was Thol Menos, who I think is in chat at the moment, actually. I don't know if he remembers. Last season, where we had this exact mirror and we were just doing nothing for like 8 turns. And then, because we both believed that we had the more powerful hand, so we couldn't like let the opponent go off because we needed to do our thing. But as soon as we did anything, our opponent would be able to get onto the board. And he did outplay me and win in the end. But that's besides the point. The important thing is that Shaman has very weird ways to play it if you know what you're doing.
I like seeing this where powerful decks have like different lines that you can take. It's really cool to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I really actually, even though I can appreciate that this deck is a little bit unhealthy at this point, I think it's a very interesting deck to play. It's just too powerful. They need to take the level down, but the playstyle I think is quite interesting for the most part.
I can get that. Levick is going to do his best he can to clear off this board. The numbers do not line up fantastically for him, though. He can clear everything but a Thunderhead if he'd like to.
That's usually not a good sentence in Hearthstone.
No, it is not. The Regenerating Thug and a Spark can trade off the 8/8. Desert Obelisk can trade over the Murloc and then your weapon. And the second Spark can kill the other 1/1. Oh, he's not going for that. Instead, putting Hawkeye on no Bloodlust. Hawkeye has the Bloodlust. That's going to be exact lethal. 8+1 is 9. Greece is going to take this series 3-1 with, I'd say, some commanding performances throughout. Every single game, I feel like they played to the best of their ability. Really solid stuff.
I'd agree completely. They've been one of the stronger teams so far. We've seen some real ups and downs here in global games. I don't know how much you caught of it last week. Quite a few teams roping out attacks. We also saw quite a few teams going with like just actual strategic misplays, I think, in the way they approach the matchup, I didn't agree with. But like you said, for the Greek team there, it really felt like they knew exactly how to approach the matchup in terms of, you don't just want to tempo out your stuff as soon as you can. You want to make that one swing turn from which your opponent just can't recover. And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, I mean, like even today we saw some really qualified players make some unnatural errors. I would say we saw Denmark, rope out and miss a very crucial attack with their sightless ranger, and just seeing that performance from Greece was really cool. I love seeing those high level mind games, especially like that Spirit of the Frog. The delay on that was very very cool to see.
I think it was. But that does mean in this group we have Ukraine and Greece going up as our winners in the initial matches. We're going to find out who will be the winner between those two coming up, and also who will be joining them going out of the group between the losers of Russia and Denmark so far. So don't go anywhere. Plenty more Hearthstone coming up today right after this.